Well, guys, happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays in general. So I hope everyone just has had a nice time the last several days. Hopefully, you guys didn't have to go into work Friday or Saturday, but things happen. I've had to work on Thanksgiving in the past or the Friday after, so I know how it goes. I did a very involved blog on this topic, and it was it was hard to tackle the video because I just covered so much ground, and I sort of said to myself, because I do these extemporaneously, you know, and I said, well, how do I sit down and just talk off the cuff and really have it match up with the amount of material that I've written about it. It took me a few days. I sort of had to collect my thoughts. You know, something that I believe personally is that gratitude is the mother of all virtues. This is the holiday where we all go around and we sort of sit around the table and we say what we're grateful for, and and I like that because it forces people to be a little vulnerable. Sometimes it's not uncommon for someone to get choked up, or someone to sort of feel awkward or put on the spot, and there's a leaving of your comfort zone in that is if you've heard any of my videos or talks, you know that I see an inherent value in sort of deliberately getting out of your comfort zone and doing and saying things that are not easy to do. But everybody always says, well, we should feel grateful all the time. But that's the one day of the year when people actually even say things like that. I've never bumped into somebody just in the middle of, I don't know, June, July, and they said, talk to me about what they feel gratitude about. Well, there are a lot of reasons why you do want to get in a place where gratitude is more of your default, where that's kind of your baseline. And there are so many ways to talk about this. The first thing I'll start with is something more of your kind of objective scientific empiricism, which is that neuroscientists have assessed that the most productive state of mind for a human being to be in is one of gratitude. And it's easy to explain why when you have taken the time to contemplate it and you've unwrapped it. So gratitude, it's easy to understand something when you also understand exactly what it isn't. So what is the opposite of gratitude? I would say that gratitude would, don't just say ungrateful. That's too easy, right? And that doesn't really inform us of what we want to get into. The opposite of gratitude would be scarcity, because to be grateful is to be thankful. It's to say thank you for XYZ thing. If you put it in broad terms, gratitude is the state of offering thanks to the source of your supply. It could be the supply of anything. Whatever it is that you go, wow, there is so much more of this than I really need or could ever want. There's just plenty. There's a plentitude of resources in some area. Now, when I say resources, I don't just mean like lumber and coal and stuff like that. I mean resources like time. I mean resources like energy, your energy. Resources like love and friendship. Resources like the resources of your own mind, which is a huge part of what we're going to talk about, which we will get into in a second. So the opposite of all that is to feel scarce. It's to feel like there is not enough. And you might say that having an awareness of scarcity can be useful in some ways, that it can make you frugal, that it can make it easier for you to practice moderation because you know that things are limited. But really, scarcity in its truest sense is never good for anybody. The sensation that there's simply not enough of fill in the blank thing to go around really does eat at your character. It eats at your peace of mind. because it brings up feelings of stress, right? If you feel like you never have enough time, if you feel like there's never enough money, if you feel like your loved ones, like your spouse, your significant other, doesn't listen to you, or you don't have enough time with them, or you're not getting the attention or the affection that you want from that person, if things are less than you believe that you need, or if you doubt your own internal resources, like maybe you doubt that you have the optimism or the resilience or the enthusiasm or even the integrity to live a happy and productive life the way that you wish you could. These are all feelings of lacking and not having enough, and sort of feeling the pinch, and feeling like, sort of just feeling like you're just screwed in whatever area because there isn't enough of what you need. And stress is the worst. Stress is, I mean, you just owe it to yourself to get stress out of your life to whatever degree is possible, because stress is just factually bad for you. When you are stressed out, your brain is secreting cortisol into your bloodstream, or your brain is telling your body to produce cortisol. See, I'm not, just disclaimer, not a scientist, not a neuroscientist, not a doctor, not anything like that. So for those of you who have a background in these things, just bear with me, because I may say things that are not 100% accurate from a medical perspective. Okay, so with that out of the way, when the cortisol hits your bloodstream, it's triggering that fight or flight response, and it's all about self-preservation in the short term. But if you are in a chronic state of self-preservation in the short term, your body is shutting down a lot of functions that are necessary for long-term health and wellness and longevity. For example, your growth hormones turn off when you're stressed. Your immune system shuts off when you're stressed. Your body has this response because the fight or flight response is when you are being attacked by a predator, right? So imagine you're about to be eaten by a tiger, right? And you don't want to taste good when this tiger bites into you, so your body floods your bloodstream with toxins and acidity so that hopefully this thing will go and spit it out. Well, that might have made sense when we were, primates or early humans trying to sort of eke out a way of life in the jungle. But that doesn't make any kind of sense if it's just, if it's just you're a little bit short on cash, or someone said something to you that you didn't like, or you got triggered by something. These are for when your life is in danger, but your body is acting as if your life is in danger when these are really just small potatoes, really, if you think about it. So it really, stress kills. Stress kills. And stress is fueled by a sense of lack, not enough, that you're in danger. Because what is that fight or flight response except the fact that you feel like you're being threatened? And so anything that makes you feel like you have less of what you need can be seen as a threat and can trigger that mechanism. And it also brings your attention to this tunnel vision where all you can think about, again, is self-preservation. Your body's doing it and your mind is doing it. Your whole organism is working in cooperation to preserve your life. But what that does, again, why this is so unsustainable in the long run and as a general way of life to be stressed, is that you get this tunnel vision, and it makes it impossible for you to be selfless, to be generous, to be empathetic, to think long term, to calm down and be considered and measured and intuitive. It makes you very impulsive, because for your survival instincts, you'd better be impulsive. You better act fast, right? Shoot first, ask questions later, because it's you or them, and it's not going to be you. That's how that mechanism works. Can't live life like that. So the easiest way to combat that, and also just a quick thing, you've noticed that people who they're really stressed out, they're often not in the best health. Anyone can observe this. People who are just a serious stress case, they've got a cold a lot of the time, or they're sort of ailing, or their energy is really low. So you can see this for yourself. So the way to get stress out of your life, and this is why I say that this is really something that you need to focus on. This is something to give a lot of energy to, because this is in the interest of your quality of life, and it's in the interest of the health of all of your relationships and the health of everything in your life. Gratitude is the opposite of that. Gratitude is the antidote to that. And it's the sensation of having enough. It's the sensation of having plenty of everything that you need and everything that you want. But here's why that doesn't always work. Here's why it can be hard to get into that mentality. Because let's suppose that you are in a tough spot. Let's suppose that these are sort of the sour times, right? I was just listening to that Portishead song, Sour Times, because it's a rainy day and it just seems like trip hop music weather, you know? So I put on Portishead Sour Times and then went straight to Massive Attack Teardrop, and I was like, yes, this is awesome. This is exactly what I wanted. It's just that kind of vibe. It's like a dark, rainy morning here in the Bay Area. So so even just that right there, even just the satisfaction of hearing exactly the music that you're in the mood for, it makes you feel like, yeah, you know, like I'm getting what I need. You can train your mind to see it anywhere. So, but you might be going through a tough spot. You know, I've been through some hard times in my life, and you couldn't just point to all these things around you that were going well and remind yourself. See, a lot of people, their state of scarcity is really just lazy, because they've got a job, they've got a roof over their head, they've got a loving family, they're making enough money, they've got plenty of possessions, they've got a car, you know, they've got someone who loves them, or at least who lives with them. You know, they've had a good education, they've come from a good family, and yet they're not present to any of those things. They're sort of blind to them, and that's a kind of laziness. But then there are people who are really going through tough times, and what I want to tell you, because I've had to learn how to do this myself, this is something that I have tested and it works, is that there are things that no matter what your circumstances are, you can become aware of them, so that you can always bring your attention back to them in those moments where you feel trapped or scarce or limited, or like that you have nothing to be thankful for. And you bring your attention back to that, and pretty soon, when you know how to work with your mind the right way, you're where you want to be. Your mental state, your mindset, your mentality, your perspective is in a place where it gives you the good feelings that you need to be at your best. Because if stress makes you at your worst, gratitude makes you at your best. Gratitude makes you at your best because when you feel like there's plenty of what you need, then you look at what you do have much more resourcefully. You say, since this is all that I really need right now and more, then all I've got to do is look at this the right way, use it appropriately, use it to its fullest, use it with an appreciative enthusiasm, and that's all that's necessary. And that, again, it makes you productive. They said the most productive state of mind for a human being is gratitude. When you go, wow, look at all this. Wow, I mean, just thank you for all of this, and let's make the most of it. Let's make the most of this. You know, when someone gives you, I don't know, like a really nice new pair of shoes or something like that for the holidays, what do you want to do? You want to go out and wear them. You know, sometimes you'll even wear them like, let's say for like the wrong occasion, like they give you a really fancy pair of dress shoes and you're just like so excited about it that you go out and wear them with your jeans or something because you're just so into it. So when you are grateful for something, when you're really thankful, you will go out and utilize it to its fullest. That's exactly what happens when you're grateful for your situation, your circumstances, what's around you. And it also makes you stop looking for what isn't there. Your attention is here. It makes you present. Gratitude makes you present because if everything I need is right in front of me and inside of me, then why do I have to sit and wait for something to arrive in the future? Why do I have to spend my time worrying about what I've lost in the past or what I used to have? It brings you focused, focused in the here and now. Anything that leads to awareness in the present moment is worthwhile. Because otherwise you're just sort of trapped in this vice of regrets of the past and anxiety about the future. When you're in the present moment, that all disappears. And it's easy to get present when you're not looking for anything that's absent from what is around you in the moment. Okay? So I'm hoping this is working. I'm hoping this is kind of opening your eyes a little bit and shifting your mentality, because these are the things that are always with you, that will never leave you, that can never be taken from you. This guy right here. When you really understand what this means, what you have at your disposal, then you realize that it is impossible for you to have scarcity. Here are some things that I am well within my rights to assume, okay? I know this about you. If you're watching this, I know that you're not in a coma, that you're not a vegetable, that you're not on life support. Right? With me so far? Highly unlikely that this is being played in a hospital where someone is in a coma, but if it was, maybe we bring them out of the coma. I also know that you've had enough life experience that this is actually holding your attention. Because if you haven't, you just haven't related to anything I've said, and you've probably clicked away from the video. But if you're still with me right now, then I know that you've lived life to a degree, and you have a fair amount of life experience to look back on. I know this about you. I know that you have the capacity to make choices. You have a decision-making faculty in here. And that is because you are able to take in information from the outside world. You have the faculties of sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. So you're able to get information about what's happening around you, and then something in here is processing it, deciding on a course of action, deciding what is the meaning of this information and what must be done about it, and then initiating the processes of executing on that plan, executing on that decision. That's all you need. Just look at that with more subtlety, more appreciation, more gratitude. When you look with enough appreciation and discernment, gratitude is unavoidable, because you realize that the only way to change anything that needs to be changed or can be changed starts with different decisions. Well, the decision maker is already up and running. The faculties of your senses are already up and running. So what needs to be addressed? What needs to be addressed is the way that you assign meaning to the information that pours into your head from the world through your senses. What does it mean? Because if you look at any area of your life that you've been mishandling, or in any area that produces stress, you will find certain assumptions, and those assumptions can be unearthed by getting really involved with observing how you behave towards whatever that might be. And an honest person will find, unwise decisions and bad habits. Whenever you feel stressed towards something, it's because you're managing it in a way where it just leads to stress, right? Everything is up to you. We create our reality. When things show up out of the blue, that's one thing. But what we do with them and the emotional experience that provides us is 100% within our control. Even things that you think are very drastic, like a disaster, like a tragedy, like the death of a loved one, you name it. It really is within your control how you feel about it. Of course, there may be an initial reaction a certain way, but if that reaction lingers and persists, it's not just your instinctive response anymore. Your mind has decided that this means something that can only be met with stress, with anxiety, with fear, with scarcity. And you can respond to that by dismissing it, by ignoring it, by being hostile towards it, by being negative in some way, by being self-defeating, by not spending the time that needs to be spent, by procrastinating, by being bitter, by depriving it of attention. You know better than I do what it is, but those are just some things that it could be. But think about the fact that all you really have to do is look at something with new eyes and ask yourself, if this is a source of pain, what would it mean to turn this into a source of peace, to turn this into a source of self-knowledge, to turn this into a source of an opportunity to make a choice, an opportunity to make the right choice, an opportunity to handle this in such a way that when it's all said and done, that I can sleep well at night, that I can look in the mirror and see someone who lives their values instead of runs from their fears. Recognize the abundance of choices. In the words of Carl Jung, we are all doomed to make choices. Think about that for a second. But see, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by the sort of ceaseless avalanche of choices. Or you could be inspired every moment by the all-you-can-eat buffet of choices. See the difference? Avalanche, buffet. I would rather eat than be buried under an avalanche. Unless, of course, that avalanche was like full of like, puppies and gold and, ice cream. Maybe too much ice cream, and, that's like a real avalanche all over again. So maybe not. But you see what I'm getting at, right? It's if you look at everything like this is a chance to affirm my values, affirm what's right. This is a chance for me to build my self-worth by doing the right thing and being able to look back on that. And it's not just that you look back on it and see, wow, I did the right thing. We don't need to be so self-congratulatory. It's really just that you don't carry regret or anxiety going forward. There's no burden, there's no baggage. And it doesn't matter how many times you've made a mistake in the past, it really does not matter. Because in each and every moment, when you seize a situation as an opportunity to choose in a way that leaves you feeling good about yourself, that makes it easier and easier and easier to forgive the mistakes of the past. It just does. Because when you start making smarter choices, when you start honoring yourself, when you start being who you need to be to look in the mirror and see someone with courage, with character, with dignity, then it's so easy to see that in the past you simply didn't have it in you to make those choices. You acted on the best of your awareness in that moment, and that was the awareness you had. And that bad decision left you with proof that this needs to be decided on differently in the future. So you can even be grateful for your mistakes, because your mistakes are proof of what needs to be done in the future. They stand as hard evidence or a fact that this did not work, so the opposite must work, or something different must work. It's all you need to know to go on. You've eliminated one way of going about things from your arsenal of choices. Be grateful for that. Be grateful that it's easy to look back on your life and get this abundance of information about what not to do in the future. Think about it though. It's so easy to beat yourself up. That's common. That's common thinking. Think uncommonly. Look at mistakes and say, wow, I've got this amazing instruction manual of what not to do. And now I can explore alternatives. And if I make a mistake again, then I've just eliminated one more thing. I've just added one more thing to my manual of things that don't work. And eventually you find plenty of things that do. Sometimes you find them easily, sometimes it takes a while. Thomas Edison notoriously had well over 1,000 failed attempts at making the light bulb. And they asked him, how did you manage to keep going after failing so many times? And he said, none of those were failures. I just found, over 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb. See the difference in that language? It's easy to feel abundant when you can look at things that way. And you can recognize that no matter how bad your habits may be, there's something much deeper than that underlies all of it, which is your capacity to learn. Your capacity to learn supersedes even the oldest and most entrenched and almost sort of irremovable patterns in your behavior. Because, see, if you are introspective enough to have some awareness of your earliest programming from childhood, then it can be very easy to feel trapped by it. Like, that's just the way I am, that's how my parents were, that's how I was raised, and now I'm stuck with that, with all of its virtues, but all of its limitations too. Well, then you haven't quite gone far enough in the thinking process. Because if you look deeper, then you see that you are a learner. Everything that you do now, you learned to do at one point. You are not an amphibian or a reptile or an insect that is simply born with a fairly static amount of pre-programming. How do we know these creatures are pre-programmed? A lot of them, that just when the eggs hatch, they go along on their own way, and they don't live in colonies, they're not social animals. That means that nobody, if they really just came out of the egg and just got going and just never hung out with another snake or another iguana ever again, then you then you know that they are doing what they're doing because they were programmed, because they obviously weren't taught. Nobody ever showed them how. But see, the ability to learn is much older than you or your generation or even the human species. The ability to learn starts with mammals, because mammals only do what they have been taught to do. So they are genetically hardwired to learn. They have a learning mechanism that supersedes any information that they have or have not learned. And this mechanism is fundamentally attentive, it's receptive, it's pattern seeking, and it is a little bit slow moving, because a pattern has to be established for your brain to really accept the idea that this is a recurring phenomenon and I had better know how to deal with this, otherwise I won't be able to face the world. Right? It wants to automate things. It's the automator. It's Dan the Automator in your head, right? So think about the power of that information. Think about the fact that your capacity to learn new things can never be taken from you. So no matter how much you have to unlearn, you can simply relearn or learn something in a new way, and it kind of overwrites the old programming. And when you understand how your learning mechanisms work, then you understand that all you need to do is find better information issued by a perceived authority. This is important, because how do mammals know who to learn from? They learn from a perceived authority. They learn from someone who seems to have it together, who takes care of them. Like the little baby birds, they learn from, big wing boss beak mama bird, right? They learn from the one that brings the worms to the nest, that shelters them, that takes care of them, that they watch this big bird flying around with ease as they're just sort of gradually realizing that they also have wings too. It's the person who's operating fluidly in areas where you're operating awkwardly and maybe sometimes tragically, right? So you find people who represent that to you. They could be people in your life, and you're very fortunate if you've got people who are functioning at a very high level, people who are still very much in love with their spouse after years of marriage, people whose kids, even though they're bratty teenagers, still look up to their parents with love and admiration, people who don't just get tired, don't get distracted, don't get ruffled. These are the people who have learned something worth teaching. And if you approach them with some humility, and some simple questions. You may have to flatter them a little bit depending on their personality, but you want their knowledge. And recognize that if you observe them, now you're setting your pattern seeking intelligence in motion. And you know that this is how your mind works. You know that your mind is going to adopt patterns with repetition when they are introduced by a perceived authority. Think about the power of that. Think about the fact that that mechanism works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for the entire time that you are alive. If that's not abundant, I don't know what is. I don't know what else I can give you. Oxygen's pretty abundant. I don't really think I can sell you on oxygen will solve your problems, but your ability to learn will solve all of your problems. Even if it can't change anything in your circumstances, you can damn well change how you feel about them. And believe me, so much of what you think can't change about your circumstances is just being kept that way by you continuing to think in the wrong way. So your ability to relearn how to think, that's that's the best that I got for you, and that's a lot. That is plenty. It's plenty. So exploit the mechanism of your learning machinery to your advantage, to your benefit, and realize that this thing works tirelessly, and it just does exactly what you tell it to do. So supposing you don't have some sort of high functioning, high performing, sort of highly evolved, self-aware, emotionally intelligent people around you, well, you've got this thing called the internet. You're watching this video right now. So there are all kinds of people who are going to hammer in better thinking into your head without you needing their phone number, without you needing an appointment to go see them, without you having to buy a ticket to go hear them talk at some arena or a book signing or anything like that. You can just go on YouTube and you can have 24-hour access to these people without them ever feeling the strain of your demands on their attention. It's amazing, right? So just some people that I've been into lately: Alan Watts, Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, Simon Sinek. There's also a guy named Brendon Burchard. He's a bit more chipper. If I'm a little bit too sort of monotone and sort of more like this kind of morose intellectual for you, then Brendon Burchard's quite animated. I learned a lot from him. Tony Robbins is great. But you can find these teachers who are kind of more your flavor. I love Dr. Wayne Dyer, for example. Lately, and these guys, they know so much about what is worthwhile in life, what's meaningful and what's not meaningful, where to focus, where not to focus. And if you listen to their talks, they have tons of stuff on YouTube, right? This is not going to cost you anything, right? It just costs you whatever you're already paying for your internet. There's no new costs here, right? So you can hammer this stuff into your head, or I would say gently massage. I keep saying hammering. I don't know. It's like an Aries thing. You always think about force, but you can gently massage the information into your mind, okay? And then your mind starts to see patterns. And now you're using the pattern-seeking part of your brain. And also, it's easy to see that these guys, they've got it together. They know what's up. So you've satisfied the need for a perceived authority. The big wing, boss beak, mama bird. It's a ridiculous expression that I just came up with because my mind is wacky that way. But I kind of fell in love with it. So you've got the perceived authority factor. You've got the repetition factor, because it's up to you how many times you repeat it. There's no limit to it. You can introduce ideas that your brain is primed to accept. And then pretty soon, you're making smarter choices. Pretty soon, you are feeling better about life. But also, you're feeling better. You're feeling better and you're feeling grateful because you are tapped into the reality of a limitless resource. What is the one key that can open all doors? So when you know how to use it, it doesn't matter that you don't already have the individual keys that only open that specific door. When you know that you have the master key, with you at all times, and you know just how to shimmy it into the lock every time to open it, then how can you possibly feel like you are lacking in any way? The resources that are intrinsic to you. That's what I focus on so much, because there are times when maybe your relationship sucks and maybe you can't quite get there to say, well, at least I'm in a relationship. Maybe that doesn't ring true for you. But what does ring true is when you know what this is about and you know how to use it, and you can shift your state of mind and you can shift your thinking and your mood without forcing anything, because you've just brought your attention back to something that is an inexhaustibly abundant source of growth, of progress. And then you're present because you're not looking for something outside of your life. In the words of Miyamoto Musashi, who wrote the Book of the Nine Rings, he was a samurai in feudal Japan, 14th century Japan, I think, 14th or 16th century Japan. He's a great teacher, but he said, never seek anything outside of yourself. There's so much in here that you can really start to ignore all of that. When you clean this up, this cleans up everything else, because what do? You act on your knowledge, you act on your beliefs, and then that influences your environment to whatever degree that it can be influenced by your actions, which is quite a bit more than what you would think. Okay? So guys, I really hope that this served you. I hope that this was sufficiently in the spirit of the holidays, but really in spirit of what we could all think a little more carefully about, and the kinds of thinking that is going to make us happier, more grateful, more gracious, more intuitive, more heart-centered kinds of people. Okay? So if you feel that way about it, then you can do me a favor and you can share the video, which is actually doing everybody a favor, if I do say so. There's more to come, guys. So again, my name is Jasvinder. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll talk real soon.